Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Help us stop the cycle of overpopulation and euthanasia. The Animal Alliance is committed to spay and neuter programs to save lives. Visit theanimalalliance.org to learn more about how you can make a difference. Together, we can ensure a brighter future for all pets. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and today we have another great guest. I love meeting new people that I've never met before, although I do feel like I've met or at least seen Rich at previous events, but I don't think I've ever had a conversation with him. And I started up a conversation at the last event that we were at, and he started talking about what he does, and it's super intriguing. Not just what he does, but who he does it for is also very intriguing. So we're going to get into that. But Rich is not born and raised in Arizona, but basically from Arizona at this point. Loves it here. And his primary focus is, or his company is called 3 Pillars Consulting. And he really just wants to help you, if you're a business owner, get more conversion on your leads. And you might think, well, okay, I'm a business owner, or I'm not a business owner, so I'm going to check out. Conversion on leads is really about communication. And are you clearly communicating what you're offering to the right person who wants what you're offering? And so how do you make those match up? Not just in business, but how do you make those match up in your leadership? How do you, if you're going to be marketing a message of legacy and how you want to be remembered, how do you speak to the right person who's actually going to remember it the way you want to remember? So there's going to be a lot of stuff that we talk about today that's directly applicable to every aspect of your life and that you can benefit from, even if you're not a business owner. Now, you may know business owners. In that case, take this. You can go into Apple or wherever you're listening to it and send it to a business owner because they need to know this. Maybe you're going to send it to somebody who could do better and doesn't want to go bankrupt, or maybe needs a good bankruptcy attorney, and maybe it would be a good lead. And so Rich is going to talk about how to convert that into the right resource. So super excited, Rich, but go ahead and tell us more about your childhood, your family. How did you get into what you're doing right now, and why are you so passionate about it?
I think I never really did a deep dive into my childhood and what kind of led me here, but I have thought about it over the years. And I grew up in Safford, Thatcher, Arizona, Gila Valley, Graham County, whatever you want to call it. But it's a little farm town, very much a little Mormon community here in Arizona. So I was raised with Mormon values and principles. And I had both my grandparents live nearby, so I got to develop very close relationships with them, aunts, uncles. I have 58 first cousins, and more than half of them lived in that area, so everybody there is my cousin or relative. So a huge extended family. But I feel like with my success and some of the things that led to it, I got to spend a lot of time with my grandpa. And we talked about a lot of things, but he was a hard worker. And as he got older, I remember celebrating his birthday, and everybody, just all the grandkids are sitting around, just getting to know him, asking questions. Grandpa, what's your favorite thing to do? And he's like, work. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your hobby? He's like, work. Well, what do you like to do when you're not working? He's like, work. And so, but I got to build houses with him. I got to do some farming with him. And I think his example, he never really had a strong conversation with me about morals and ethics and values. But he was very high integrity. When I think of a person I know or come across in my life that just has high standards and how he values with integrity and honesty, I always think of my grandpa as being that, kind of the apex of integrity for me, and just his example. And then I went through some things, personal things, and like horrible divorce, custody situation. I think a lot of us have gone through that. It seems to be more common than not these days. I feel like the government should give a stipend for people every 10 years that they stay married for not wasting their time. But so I went through some things, and then I kind of got into like a depression and kind of lost myself and who I was, and I strayed from my values. And then I had ended up being surprised with two little twin girls. And I think at that point I was just like, hey, I need to get my values. I need to be example to them. And so I went back to my core values and put my life in check. And I just started getting these jobs. And I got a job that I didn't really like, but I'm always I've been in sales my whole life. I was raised doing that, going to trade shows. My dad was in politics. And so we're always traveling and trade show and going door knocking and meeting people and shaking hands and kissing babies and all that good stuff. And so I've always been in sales, and in any sales environment, I always found myself like having a lot of pride and motivation to be a top performer. And I started reading books, and I had a sales mentor who's a very successful businessman. He pretty much mentored me and introduced me to books and resources and tools. And I didn't really realize until I was in my early 20s that selling is a skill and it needs to be developed like anything else you do, like whether it's basketball or anything else. So I started developing the sales skill. And so I took this job about 8 years ago at this company that's and wasn't ran very well. They're offering a horrible product. I worked there for a short period of time before they went out of business. I worked for them right as they were heading out of business. But I decided like I wanted to be successful there, even though I didn't like it and it wasn't a good job and or a good environment. But I just put my blinders on. I focused on what I was supposed to do. And that got attention from somebody, just doing good in a situation. And I feel like that emulates my grandpa, like doing the best you can in any situation. So I did the best I could. And I was the only guy out of probably 6 people that I saw coming in and out of that company in 9 months. I was the only guy that they hired that year that could even close one deal. And I was consistently closing 1 or 2 deals a month, and they were big commission deals. So I was getting paid big commissions on those deals. But when the company went out of business, my hard work and my effort got attention from somebody. And that guy went on to move to another job, and they started recruiting people. And then, so when they started thinking about who do you know that's a good salesperson, I came into his mind. He reached out to me. I got recruited. I promoted quickly into that company. And that company is where I got connected. I told them I have a skill set to do trade shows and travel and meet people. And so they tested me at a trade show, and I went to the trade show, and I kind of like got really involved, and my efforts like made the show happen. We were able to build relationships and generate revenue that for the whole next few years based off of my efforts. And so they had me travel. Like every time you travel, I talk to somebody and end up doing business with us. And then I made connections there. And so that company's actually surprisingly no longer in business too. You know, it's always hard to do a startup, but they're no longer in business. But I made connections there. And so for the last coming up on 5 years, I've been able to start and run this business. I have 7 employees now. I have over 20 attorneys across the country that I service. I have a few more. I'm actually looking to launch another one next week. I'm in the process of launching 2 more this week. And I have 3 part-timers and 4 full-timers or almost full-timers that work for me now. So I'm at the point in the business where like things are going really well and can start to continue to scale and grow. But there's a huge need in the industry I work in and just the entire world that needs my services. So there's a huge need, which is an awesome feeling, an awesome position to be in.
Ever feel like there's just too many pets around? Join the Animal Alliance in our mission to spay and neuter as many as we can so that our furry friends are no longer a nuisance. Check out theanimalalliance.org to find out how you can make the world a little less furry.
Awesome. And I appreciate you kind of going through that history. It's I'm from a big family. I don't know that our kids will have as many cousins as you had. 56 is a lot of cousins. How many aunts and uncles did you have?
There was there were 6 kids in my dad's family and 5 in my mom's. And one of my dad's brothers had 8 kids. So, and then they have kids, but yeah.
Yeah, because I'm the 7th of 11 kids.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I know, right? I can't imagine like being a parent now of 3. I'm like, how did that happen? I know how it happens, but it's just crazy that.
How do you make it work?
Yeah, you make it work. You allow it to happen. The stress, the anxiety, and my parents. We grew up. My parents were Pizza Hut drivers. Early part of my childhood, and then my dad finally started working at the phone company for a while and just barely retired. So it's been a long haul, but it's just fascinating. What were some of the benefits that you saw about being raised in a town where everybody knew at least your family, if not like knew exactly who you were and who your parents were?
There's pros and cons. I mean, my dad was the law, so and he was very anti. He thought that traffic citations is a form of citation or the form of taxation through citation. That's what he said. So if I got pulled over, everybody knew who my dad was. So I got out of a lot of tickets. I got out of more than I got. But I think in that town, it was so small, everybody kind of knew everybody. Anyways, but of course we were like both my parents grew up there as well. And so we're just kind of related to most everybody anyways. But when I moved there, when I was about 8 or 9, there's like, I don't know, I think one thing I learned is like politics is dirty. It doesn't matter what side of it you're on. It's like throwing yourself into just a big pile of dirt, like back talking. And it's like they expose every area of your life that they can to try to make you look good or bad, depending on who's fighting. So I think the political thing, like I have a lot of compassion for people that decide to go into politics because it's not an easy life. You have to resell yourself and reapply for your job every term, which is also hard. But everybody just knew everybody there. I feel like it was good because I noticed that there's like kind of generations where, but I had this generation where we were all really focused on our futures, focused on, living high values and supporting each other for like personal growth. And so I had this really good community of friends, and I'm still friends with them today. One of my best friends right now lives right down the road from me, and he grew up like pretty much neighbors. So
yeah, I was going to say, do a lot of the people who you grew up with, are a lot of them still out there, or is it like 50-50? What percentage of the people grew up and left that small town for a bigger town?
I'd say probably 80%, or if not more than 80%. I mean, because either you work for the mine, you're a farmer, or you work for the college or the government. And so anybody that can get government jobs or have a career there, the area has grown quite a bit, but it seems to be make or break off of, whatever's going on with copper. So if copper's down, like the mines start to slow down and shut down. But if it's up, it seems to be booming. I think they opened up another area of the mine, but the economy there is great. But I always tell people I'm not a farmer or a miner, so you got to leave. But there's surprisingly a lot of successful people came from that. It's kind of
I grew up in a tiny town, maybe 2,000 people up in Idaho, and they're like pretty much everybody's farmers. I don't know that they're farmers or ranchers, right? You either farmer or rancher. And yeah, I'm neither. Like I don't like dirt much. I'm definitely a city boy, so it is fascinating. But the things you learn, the values you learn, being in that type of town, like the working. I love the story of your grandpa. Just like, hey, just work. What's your hobby? Work. What do you do for fun? Work. Just the ability to stay active, and that type of work ethic. Doesn't matter what you apply that work ethic to. That's something that you can, if you're willing to put in the time, willing to put in the effort to get good at something and to really choose to excel and work at something, then it doesn't matter what it is, right? And especially as technologies kind of come in more into the forefront of society, then work looks different now than it did 20, 30 years ago, or it can look different now than it did 20, 30 years ago. But it's still important to learn how to do. It's still important to put the same type of energy. And sometimes I see people, we're going to get into I'm gonna, let's see, where do I want to go with this? Well, we'll just go. It is what it is. So your career field at this point is helping people increase their conversions on leads, right? That's one of the things you do, and you do other things, but one of the things you do. Well, that sometimes individuals, they want the easy way out. They think, oh, well, technology, robots, AI, everything, it's going to come and replace us so we don't have to do all that work. And that's going to alleviate our minds. It's going to alleviate our time and our souls and everything. So we don't have to be overly stressed. It's going to make our life easier. So many people are seeking an easier life rather than a work hard life. And they think that as they bring technology into their life, it allows them to become complacent and replace themselves. And those people probably will get replaced by some form of technology because they are replaceable people. My brother, he calls them NPCs, non-player computers, whatever. Like, they're just walking around society. They're just really an NPC. They're non-player people. They're just there to be played against, but not.
That new movie, Free Guy, with
yeah, exactly. No real thought is going into themselves. And then there's other people who are around and they're saying, okay, yes, does this free up me? It does. This technology does free me up, but only the point of freeing me up is or creating a more consistent strategy and more consistent system so that something can consistently happen, more consistent than a human. It's not to remove myself, it's to free myself up or get one less thing on my plate so that I can go even more intensely. I can work even harder in the area of my zone of genius, in the area of what I need to be doing. So there's certain things that can be offloaded, but talk to us about in your career how you've seen some people offload stuff that would have been a great thing to offload if they had actually chosen the time to excel or become great at the thing they needed to be great at. But then maybe if they just don't, like, what does that look like when the people who do offload properly and the people who don't?
I think there's a lot of examples of that. There's people that are skating through, and then actually people that have that strive for greatness and success. And I saw a TED Talk recently, I think just maybe yesterday, where the speaker was talking about the number one factor in whether or not somebody's successful, and whether all the attributes and characteristics and adjectives you can use is the number one thing that determines success in the future is grit. So, and I feel like I just was kind of raised with that grit. I don't know, just playing sports, and I feel like the things that really matter to me in life, I excelled at. And I feel like when I started like having a family and having kids, like I feel like that was kind of my purpose in life. Like I want to make, like, I don't want them to struggle, or and I see that as, like, you know, I take calls for bankruptcy all day long, and so it's kind of interesting to analyze and kind of see the background with people. But one example I have is this girl. You know, I talk to grown adults. They're in their like late 30s, 40s, sometimes like late 40s and 50s, and they're like, I'm like, how much money do you make? It's an important part of the question that we ask is what their income is for looking into bankruptcy. And I talk to so many people that make $20 an hour, and they're grown people with kids. And I'm like, why do you make $20 an hour? Like, what led you to accept that in your life? And I kind of understand their mindset. There's like they didn't really have any drive. Nobody really showed them anything. They didn't take the time to like think outside of their little box of $20 an hour that they've been, you know, when they were in their 20s, maybe they made $15 an hour. So here they are 20 years later, making $20 an hour is more than that, but you're in poverty at $20 an hour right now. Even if you have two people making $20 an hour, it's hard to make ends meet in this economy, in this world right now. But I remember, like, I feel like people just accept whatever's in front of them, and they don't think, like, if I did something a little bit different, I could have a dramatic different, you know, this could have a dramatic, like, huge impact on my life. And I feel like that was kind of me, is I never just settled for mediocrity or the bare minimum. I always like wanted better, and I feel like I could do better. And I remember reading, I think it's Brian Tracy's book, Psychology of Sales. And one of the examples is said that, you know, the difference between a racehorse, if you look at racehorses, like, you know, we spend millions and millions of dollars on these horses, and it's a huge, like, you know, industry. But the difference between like a multi-million-dollar horse and a couple $100,000 horse is just a matter of seconds. Like, fractions of seconds consistently to something a little bit better. And actually, one of the most successful attorneys that I've networked with, he's part of our little network. I've been very grateful to have met and crossed paths with some of them, like actually the most successful people in this industry nationwide. I have connections and business affiliations with them. But just at a bankruptcy convention, I got to spend some time with him. His name's John Orcutt out of North Carolina. And we were talking to one of his attorneys, and for some reason, the system just wasn't working for this attorney. The attorney really had to drive, and he really put in his best effort. Sometimes things just don't work out. Don't know if it's demographics or whatever. But John Orcutt, like he said, is it just look at the situation, just find one thing you can do just a little bit better. Just a little bit better. It's like, doesn't have to be dramatic, just have this big thing. I think people are just waiting for this answer or this magic pill or this magic formula or this magic thing to make this big impact on their lives. But it's just doing something a little bit better every day or a little bit better than anybody else. And that's kind of what I found in my sales career. Is maybe just a form of laziness or creativity or whatever it was. But I found that I could actually make what in that job I mentioned earlier, I found I could make half the calls that I was required to make and close more deals than anybody else because I was just that more effective on the phone. And I just close everything I can. I'm just a closer. Like when you get somebody on the phone, that's your chance to close them and convert that lead. So make use of your time. And there's so many people that I find like, okay, well, let's follow up later. Have a follow-up conversation, a follow-up appointment later. But once they hang up the phone, your chances of getting them back and closing them drop dramatically. So but that's kind of that's one thing that's always stuck with me, just doing things a little bit different. But going back to the example, as I see people that make $20 an hour, and I had this caller come in, she moved here from Arizona. She moved to Arizona from California. So she's used to California wages. And this girl was not bright. She wasn't very intelligent. She couldn't speak very well, but she's used to California wages. So when she came to Arizona, she wasn't looking at jobs at $20 an hour. She's looking at jobs that she's like, I need to make at least $75,000, $80,000 a year. That's what she's used to making in California. So that was her box that she was in, and that's what she accepted. And so, but then I talked to these other people, like I actually hired a girl. She called in for bankruptcy. She was not making very much money. I'm like, you speak really well and you seem creative. Like, I want to get to know you. And I was like, are you open to different jobs? And she was making $14 an hour plus bonuses. And then but bonuses were slow. And I'm like, and she's a single mom. Like, how do you make ends meet? It gets hard and things are slow. Now she's working for me, making a lot more money, but that's just what she accepted. But I just found that this lady from California, she got a job making $80,000 a year. And I talked to these other people that are really bright and feel more capable, and they just accept, almost half of that as their salary. And it's just because they accept it, and they're stuck there, and they don't like, what can I do to fix my life or make my situation better?
Can't stand the sight of another stray dog or cat? Well, you're in luck. The Animal Alliance is here to reduce pet overpopulation. Support our spay and neuter efforts by visiting theanimalalliance.org. Together, we can keep the animal numbers down.
Yeah, neuroplasticity is such a fascinating thing. And the idea of where do we fit and what are we willing to accept? A lot of people, they get told when they're younger, hey, becoming a millionaire is your goal, or getting, their parents never made more than $20 an hour. So they feel like subconsciously, if they make more than their parents, then sometimes they have to stop idolizing their parents, but they don't understand math. They don't understand basic rule of 72. And most of those people are actually earning far less than their parents ever earned. Because when you factor in the time value of money and how much inflation's impacted their wages, they're so stuck on the dollar amount rather than the value. And one of the things I like about kind of what you were talking about, your childhood being raised and having your grandparents there, is if you're always focused on how do I add more value, how do I add the same amount or more value, and don't worry about the money will come in way bigger increments than it came before in a lot of cases. But we already mentioned this, right? I'm the 7th of 11 kids, and my parents were able to raise all of our family on far less income dollar amount than what would be required to raise that many people now. So the equivalent, you'd probably need $200,000, almost $300,000 a year to really feed that many people at this point, and get them clothes and sports and everything that we do. That would be a difficult thing to do with 11 kids at this point, far more difficult than it was then. And just a simple thing, I'm helping a client right now, and we're going through and identifying their policies. She's 83 years old, and her first life insurance policy they got, it was 15 cents a month was the premium. 15 cents a month, 1941. And I'm just like,
God.
geez, like think of that. Like 15 cents a month, that was a justifiable payment for a life insurance policy.
Wow. Yeah, that's insane.
Like you almost feel like we're in a different era, you know. They got the policy looks like this nice pressed, very nice paper, but it ornate piece of paper like an old bond or something. You're like, what the heck is this? This is essentially the difference of inflation happening in our lives. So I want to go back into your life a little bit here, because you mentioned that you kind of grew up, you got married, then you went through a divorce, went through custody battle. What do you feel like derailed from your values that you were raised with, or maybe you mentioned that your value system kind of lost sight of either through that process, before that process, I don't know when, but what was it about going through that identity crisis of, you know, having a marriage, having a family, everything, and then losing it, that caused you to, in your mind, maybe leave or abandon your value system that you were raised with?
I think it was just like mindset, and just like letting outside influences affect my decisions in life. And I just kind of found that, like, you know, got divorced. A lot of bad things happened after that. You know, false accusations. And I'm just going to ask you to invite me back on this have a different conversation about that later.
Sure.
I mean, an interesting situation. I feel like that could help a lot of people, but just being accused of things that I didn't do, and just thrown, you know, not being able to be around my kids that were my purpose, and just all these things. And so just kind of created this, like I just had everything that was driving me, motivating me to work, all of a sudden was like just taken away from me. Just my life changed. I, you know, left the house with whatever could fit in my truck. And then I just thrown into this like huge legal battle that was just taking all of my money, so I couldn't even afford to live. And a lot of men get there, and it's hard, and
Sure.
Get really dark and lonely. And I saw a statistic that 21 white men per week kill themselves over situations like that, which is really sad. I'm just going to tell all you men out there, or women, I was late to get on this podcast. My friend just lost his wife to self-inflicted.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So, and we keep in touch, and we just got into a conversation about that. But, and I lost another friend just a month or two ago, same thing. And then last fall, another friend. But it just, yeah, two of them were female, one was male, but like, I feel like people just kind of look at that as an easy way out. But, I just had everything that was, you know, that was my sole purpose of drive, was just stripped from me, and all my money was going to lawyers and defense and custody and things like that. So it was, and then, so I was just like skating through life. I would just like, wherever the wind blew me, wherever I was going, I was just trying to escape this like miserable pain and depression, and just found myself in relationships that I shouldn't have been in. And if I had my head about me, I would have never engaged or been involved with that person. And then my values changed, and some of my friendships that were really valuable to me, some of those started to go away just because I was a different person. I was living my life differently. Yeah, I just look back and I'm kind of like laughing at myself, just thinking of some of the stupid things I did. But, and then I think I just got one day, I don't even know, honestly, if it was like just my twins being born, I just realized like, okay, like how, like you're a dad again, like these little children are relying on you. And, and if they can't rely on me, who can they rely on? Right.
Right.
Like, so I decided like, I need to teach them like I was taught by example, and I need to make their life great. And the only way they're going to see that is if I become great myself. And so I went back to my values and just looking at like some of the friendships I lost, and was like, and looking back, like one of my best friends all through high school, like all grown up, roommates in college. I was just living such, and he's very successful, and he stopped answering my phone calls and stopped, inviting me over to hang out. And we didn't really have a conversation about it, but kind of through mutual friends, like, yeah, I just like he's like, your life just became so heavy and so toxic, and you're venting to him all the time, and he has kids that are becoming teenagers and a wife and a business to run. So I was like, he wants to spend his time and effort growing his business and focus on his family. And here I was like bringing all my heavy weight and dumping this on people. And I'm like, and leaning on them for like a source of support. And I wasn't leaning on myself a lot. And every choice I was making was having an outcome. And the choices I was making for a period of time had a negative outcome. And I kind of adopted that and was like looking at him and his life and the choices that he's made. And I'm like, I need to make different choices and do different. And I just started living my life like my grandpa and how I was raised. And I started making these connections and these business connections. And as I got this business partnership. And one of the things I felt like is there's trust that comes from taking accountability. Like I think sometimes people get accused of something, see it all the time, like helping a business. Like if you're in a board meeting or a group of people, like I remember being in leadership meetings and something would go wrong, and like they point at one person, like, oh, it's not my fault, it's that person, or it's my employees, and my employees are doing. And so they're always, finding excuses. But like I've learned that when you take accountability for something and you own it and own control. So it's like if I'm a manager and I'm managing 12 people and they're failing, they're probably failing because of something I failed to do as a leader. And I find that there's a lot of trust built when you own it, take accountability for it, acknowledge it, find a way to do it better, move forward. And so I incorporated that as I started this new career with business partners and business affiliates. And of course, our integrity and our character always comes into question. And anytime they came into question, I just decided I'm just going to own it and like just own everything. I mean, you're the CEO of your life, and any business fails, it's the CEO's fault. If the business succeeds, it's the CEO's fault. So either way it goes, it's your fault. And so I just owned every aspect of my life. I end up in situations where like it would be easy to like try to be, oh, I didn't do that, or it wasn't me. I found owning it actually built strong relationships with my business partners and my business affiliates. And then when I was put in situations where my character, like the outcome of that is going to tell that person who I am and how I handle the situation. So I was multiple situations over the last 5 years. I have 4 different business affiliates and a business partner, and they saw who I am. And so now when challenges come up, they know who I am. I've proved myself. So we have this relationship of trust that we overcome problems and obstacles together. And that just having that relationship of trust has been the key part of my success. And I literally make 6 figures from one guy, 6 figures from another guy, 5 figures from one guy, another 5 figures from another guy. So like all that combined, I'm doing really well just based off of those relationships. So,
yeah, I think that's really when we pull back the curtain. So we're going to run out of time, it is what it is today. But I want to highlight this. So one of the things that you had talked about with me, and you brought it up a few times here, is you help people lead conversion specifically with bankruptcy attorneys, correct? Yeah. So a big part of that is helping 2 things: helping the attorney market properly to the potential client, and also helping screen the potential client and make sure that potential client actually knows what to expect when they're walking into that relationship. The reason I wanted to go so much into the family side and now hearing even more details of that perspective, I didn't know what I was going to find necessarily. As far as I don't know Rich we literally met each other last weekend, and I heard him talk about a little bit. I was like, okay, I want to interview this guy. Why? Because there's things that are really crucial about becoming successful. All of us have different experiences in our lives. He got to go through a divorce, a custody battle, false accusations, a removal of identity of who he was and having to refine that. he now serves people in the bankruptcy world where people are going from the same disruption in their life, maybe not on a family unit level, but on a financial level, where their life is being turned upside down at this point. When you're going through bankruptcy, they're basically saying, look, we want to take everything from you, take all of your pride, all your dignity, everything. You're on the ice for anywhere from 3, 5, 7 years, 13 years, whatever. And you're just kind of screwed. Like, it's better than going to jail, like would have happened years ago. It's better than becoming a slave or indentured servitude, but it still kind of sucks from a societal perspective to go through bankruptcy. Not as bad as it could be. And definitely it's a tool to be used.
I'm going to reject and disagree with that. Actually,
no? Okay, go for it.
That's a common misconception. That's kind of what I do. Is like, I was in a situation after my divorce where I had 2 different family law attorneys, like, hey, you should go file bankruptcy. You're dealing with a lot of debt. My ex-wife was not very financially smart, and there's a lot of financial problems that I wasn't aware of until we got divorced.
Sure.
They go file bankruptcy, but it was like, I was out of money and I didn't want to do it. All these stigmas, we grow up playing board games, Monopoly. Oh no, bankrupt. And then bankruptcy is the worst thing. You play, we watch game shows on TV, like, oh no, bankruptcy, like Wheel of Fortune, like, oh no, you lost everything. But that's kind of what I do. One of the most important things I do is we help people overcome the common misconceptions about bankruptcy so they can make a good decision. But literally, people would rather jump off a bridge or put a gun to their head rather than file bankruptcy.
Exactly.
Yeah, so bankruptcy is like, I tell people, and if you're like, I'm not getting political, I don't know if this is political or whatever your audience is, but not to get political, but a lot of people like say to me, hey, well, Donald Trump filed bankruptcy, blah, blah, blah. But he didn't file bankruptcy on his own. A lot of the times he filed bankruptcy because, and he even talks about it, you can look this up, he talks about it. He's like, I had these investments and the creditors were just being horrible and they weren't working with me and charging me, like overcharging me on interest and things like that. So he's like, I use bankruptcy as a financial tool to be able to get a return on my investment and to get more control over my investments. And so similar to, we see people, I'll talk about like, it's kind of in political culture, people talking about wealthy people using the tax code to save money. Like, oh, they're being shady and they're not paying their fair share. I'm like, no, they're educating themselves and they're utilizing the tax code to save money. So similar to that, bankruptcy is an area of the law, and it's really silly because people call me like, why are you looking into bankruptcy? He's like, or why did you avoid it for so long? But people literally deal with these financial problems for decades, like over 10 years, 15 years. And there's like, and then finally they're getting sued and people are taking money from them out of their paychecks. And they're like, I guess I need to file bankruptcy and it's going to hurt my credit for 7 years. But in bankruptcy, you can repair your credit pretty much within 1 year, 2 years, have full use of your credit with some nuances with it. A lot of people are surprised. You can get a better car loan the day after you file bankruptcy in most cases than you could in your current situation. But bankruptcy is just a legal tool used as a financial resource to help you get out of debt. I have a friend that lost millions of dollars in the housing crash in like 2009. He had investments all over the country. Like, he was building his real estate portfolio that was going to be his retirement. Then the housing market crashed. And so he put all of his businesses in his wife's name. And then he worked as like a W-2 employee for his businesses where he's just taking a small amount of money. He lived in a state where it wasn't community property. I think it was Idaho he lived in. And he worked to pay off all these people, all of his creditors. He's literally earned millions of dollars to pay off his creditors. And finally, Sally Mae, one of the creditors, he owed him $5 million or something, like $3 or $5 million. And they wouldn't settle with him. And he's like, well, I'm just going to file bankruptcy. And then he just like, oh my gosh, he's like, here I thought I was doing the right thing and I wanted to be honest and do integrity. And so I'm paying my creditors back because I owed that money. But it's like, but at the end of the day, he's like, I looked at all those millions of dollars I earned to pay back my creditors just to end up in a bankruptcy anyways, because the creditor wasn't working with me. And he's like, I have a higher obligation to myself and my children rather than these creditors that, they get tax write-offs and government and tax benefits when a person files bankruptcy. He's like, my higher obligation should be to me and my family, and the money that would, like, how that money could have benefited me and my family would have gone further than me working and like losing all those years and countless hours of work and all the time I lost with my family to do that. So, but just look at it as a financial tool. So that's mainly what I do is I help people overcome the obstacles, overcome the misconceptions. And me and my team, we just work as a guide, and we guide you to the attorney. And then as far as helping the attorneys out, that's a different story. And I'm actually getting into doing this with family law, because when people are lost, family lawsuits, getting the right attorney at the start helps out a lot, whether it's bankruptcy, family law, criminal cases, all of that. Getting a good attorney and the right attorney at the beginning of the situation is going to have a big factor.
Sure. And that's what I was, thank you for jumping in. That's what I wanted to express here on this podcast is a lot of people have these relationship issues, go through divorce, and they lose themselves because they were never educated properly on how and why a divorce is helpful. Look, I'm not advocating families get disrupted and everybody go divorce. Also, I'm not advocating abuse, and I think abuse should be exited as fast as quickly as possible in any scenario by any party. And so it's the same thing when you're in an abusive relationship in a financial situation. You may not feel like it's abuse because you've been gaslit by the public and by the society, by the bankers, by these people that you should feel like obligated to them. You should it's gaslighting, okay? And that's why that's why I wanted to have you on, Rich, is because I want that to change. I want people to understand that he had his life experience. I don't know what his financial situation was through that divorce. He kind of alluded to it was not great, right? Yeah. But when you do that, when you know that emotional journey in one area of your life, that emotional journey can speak directly to somebody else's emotional journey with a different stimulus. So he's uniquely qualified to help people through this bankruptcy process, and now through a family law process, and maybe through a criminal process of finding the right attorney, using the tools that were actually written into the law for you to use and not feel shame about them. He's gone through the full emotional journey, and he has the ability to then communicate and clearly understand where you might be at, why you might be thinking about making decisions, even if they're not the right decisions for you, or what is the right decision. But if you can remove yourself from the emotion and say, okay, let's look at what is, let's factually identify where we're at, where we want to be. What's the fastest pathway there? Sometimes I literally have somebody this morning text me, hey, and I've not talked to this person in 6 years. Okay. I'm surprised he still has my number. I'm fine with it. I'm grateful to help him, but he texted me, he said, literally, hey, Sam, who do you know do you know a good bankruptcy attorney? It's literally what he asked me this morning. I was like, well, funny enough, I'm actually going to be talking to Rich today, and I will get you in touch. And he said, it'll be even better if you speak Spanish. I was like, okay, great, buddy. I'll do my best to find you a attorney.
I do have somebody that speaks Spanish.
Anyways, but the point is, he's sitting there struggling. So I'm asking him questions. Hey, what's your situation? How much debt are you in? Why are you so terrified? What's the draw of bankruptcy? I'm not saying it's good or bad. It might be the right solution for you. What's the draw? Is there other ways to accomplish it? What's the biggest thing is, are you getting to your objective, and how do you get there? And all of the tools are on the table. Discharging debt is on the table. Like everything's on the table. It's what is the best way to get there. And so that's where I think if we all understand that, rather than emotionally calling any of these tools good or bad and feeling any sort of way, just go in emotionless. Go in and discover what's possible if.
Yeah, just ask. Right. One thing I could plug just to help people out is we've partnered up, me and my business affiliates have developed a relationship with the Ladylike Lawyer, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. All of her channels, her entire platform is based off of, she's a very successful 20 plus years of bankruptcy experience. She's a bankruptcy attorney out of Ohio. And I found her years ago and just found a way to kind of team up and partner with her. But so the Ladylike Lawyer, follow her. All of her content is overcoming the misconceptions about bankruptcy. There's phone numbers that you can call there. You can call and get a free consultation or free assessment. We work with attorneys. My affiliation, literally coast to coast. We have bankruptcy attorneys, even Hawaii, Alaska, whatever, wherever you need one, we can get connected. So she's there to overcome the misconceptions of bankruptcy. But just one little thing is, Congress found in the 90s that these creditors are predatory. And if you have a decent median income and a decent credit score, there's almost no limits with how much credit you can get. And so when things get financially hard, people end up using their tap into their credit resources, credit cards, personal loans, things like that to help make ends meet. They use it as a secondary source of income. And then by the time they're, start carrying balances on credit cards for longer than 2 months, those interest rates are so high and so horrible that they're just in this huge financial hole that they cannot get out of. So bankruptcy is typically the cheapest, quickest, and easiest way to get out of debt and fix your financial situation. And we are gaslit. I like that you said that, because there are these other scammer companies. Any debt consolidation program, 99% of them do not work. They can't work. You can do that yourself for free, whatever they claim to do with you. There's no legal protection. There's no guaranteed outcome. It's an overpromise and underdeliver. And typically people end up spending thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars on these programs just to end up in bankruptcy anyways. So I always find that there's security in using the law to solve your problems.
Yep, I agree completely. And I appreciate you coming on to share that. We've got to end it now. I've got another appointment that I've got to hop on. I appreciate you so much. Where would they go to find out more about your services or get connected to you if that was going to work out?
3 Pillars Intake Pros, you can start there, or even the Ladylike Lawyer. She's a good resource. If you call that number on her thing, it actually gets rerouted to my business affiliates or my team. So if you have questions about bankruptcy, or you can contact me through 3pillarsintakepros.com is my website.
Awesome. We'll catch you guys later on the Fuel Your Legacy show.
Thanks, Sam.
Sick of pets taking over the world? Well, so are we. At the Animal Alliance, our goal is to spay and neuter our way to fewer animals. Head to theanimalalliance.org to learn how you can support this very necessary cause.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.